Nixon saw Vietnam as a diversion to his ultimate goal, which was to create a new international order. Nixon wanted to take this bipolar world of two superpowers, Russia and America, and change it to a multipolar world. He wanted to see China, Japan, Western Europe be elevated, something to the like the status of superpowers, and evolve the Cold War that way. Nixon, of course, could do this with a great degree of credibility because he is the Cold Warrior, right? He is really one of the original guys who did the Red Scare and had been harder on communism than probably anybody in America, Joe McCarthy included. And America by this time still refused to recognize China's existence. Or that is to say, we were pretending that Chiang Kai-shek's government in exile in Taiwan was still the official government of all of China, when in reality, of course, it was Mao Zedong's communist government that was the government of China. But Nixon is willing to ditch Chiang, who he sees as fairly useless, and use China as a counterweight to Russia. He knew that China and Russia, even though they were both communists, they didn't really like each other that much. And he figured if we could get friendly with China, that would put pressure on the Soviets. And in July of 1971, Kissinger visits Beijing secretly. In the fall of 1972, Nixon has the UN oust Taiwan and recognize China, recognize Mao Zedong's communist government of China. And then in February of 1972, Nixon shocks everyone by showing up in China. He doesn't tell anybody. You just get up one day, and there it is on TV and the news. He's sitting there meeting with Mao Zedong. We still haven't formally recognized them. That won't happen until later that year. But now Nixon has open talks with the Chinese, which is a major moment. At the same time, Nixon is pursuing what we call détente with the Soviets, or an easing of tension with the Soviets. In 1971, the SALT talks, or the Strategic Arms Limitations talks, have both sides agree to stop building new intercontinental ballistic missiles. Nixon and Brezhnev, who's by now the premier of the Soviet Union, Khrushchev is passed away, or maybe he's not dead, but he's no longer the premier, will trade visits. Nixon will go to Russia, and Brezhnev will come to America. And this is huge news. I mean, here we have the guy who made his name by accusing Alger Hiss of being a communist, meeting with the leader of communist China and now the leader of communist Russia. The big powers are actually getting along fine. In reality, during the early 1970s, there wasn't really any tension, or very little tension, between the Soviets and the Americans. The source of instability is the smaller countries, the lesser developed countries as we call them now. The Nixon Doctrine declared that the U.S. would participate in the defense and development of allies and friends, but would leave the basic responsibility for the future of those friends to the nations themselves. So we'll help you set up a government, but we're supposed to then get out and let you do what you're going to do. And as we recede from our role in these small nations, they will begin to dominate the UN just through sheer numbers. There's more small nations than big ones. But many of these nations that we get involved in will turn to authoritarian dictatorships to fend off radicals from both sides, from the left and the right. In 1970, for example, the CIA decides to aid the military dictator Augusto Pinochet in Chile when he overthrows the left-leaning but democratically elected Salvador Allende. And when Allende is killed, Pinochet sets himself up as a dictator in 1973. And he will be one of the most brutal, reprehensible dictators really in world history, doing unspeakable things. You should Google it. But we back him because he's not a communist, because he's our guy. And that's going to become a major trend. It doesn't matter how bad a person you are. If you're our guy, we got your back. The Middle East is becoming more and more a source of unrest, and this is due to the Palestinian refugees, the people who have been displaced by the Jews moving into Israel. In 1967, there was the Six-Day War, and this created a lot of Palestinian refugees, and they have nowhere to go. And that's going to create lots of problems as the other countries in the area, who are Arab like the Palestinians, will feel a great deal of sympathy with the Palestinian people. On Yom Kippur in October of 1973, this is a Jewish holiday, Egypt and Syria attack Israel. Israel struggles for 10 days and then counterattacks into the Sinai Peninsula of Egypt. And does quite well. They're moving quickly through the Sinai. And then America pressures Israel to accept a ceasefire as soon as Israel begins winning the war. The Arabs protest American support of Israel with a brief oil embargo that causes gas prices in America to spike and severely hits our economy, although only for a short period of time. And this is really a crucial moment because America begins to now realize we don't just need to worry about the Soviets. All these little countries, these smaller countries that we didn't think a whole lot about, they can hurt us too. They can get us too, particularly if they have a lot of oil or other raw materials that America needs.